The anonymous apartment was a symphony of muted grays and the lingering scent of stale coffee. Caelan O'Connell, known as Jax in the shadowed corners of the city, moved through its confined spaces with a practiced, almost silent efficiency. The dust motes danced in the solitary shaft of weak afternoon light that pierced the grimy window, illuminating a meticulous ritual. He ran a damp cloth over the worn countertop, then wiped down the chipped porcelain sink until it gleamed faintly. Every movement was precise, economical, a reflection of the disciplined life he had carved out for himself over the past 7 years undercover. He was a ghost, a whisper in the wind, a man who had shed his old skin so completely that sometimes even he wondered who Caelan O'Connell truly was. The silence in the apartment was a constant companion, broken only by the low, steady hum of the ancient refrigerator in the tiny kitchenette and the distant, indistinct rumble of city traffic. Sometimes, a siren would wail blocks away, its specific rhythm, a rising crescendo followed by a fading lament, registering in Jax's hyper-aware senses. He knew the difference between an ambulance, a fire truck, and a squad car by the pitch and urgency of its cry. It was part of the job, part of staying alive. Dinner was a solitary affair, a cold, unseasoned chicken breast and a handful of mixed greens, eaten directly from the plastic container. There was no plate, no silverware beyond a plastic fork, no attempt at comfort. He ate slowly, deliberately, chewing each bite as if dissecting its components. His gaze fixed on nothing in particular, yet absorbing everything. The faint smell of stale cigarettes from the apartment next door, the drip-drip of a leaky faucet somewhere down the hall, these were the texture of his existence. He was a living sensor, every nerve ending tuned to the subtle shifts in his environment, a necessity when one lived on the precipice of discovery. The isolation wasn't a choice, but a consequence. A heavy cloak he wore every waking moment. A sudden, sharp yelp pierced the muted city drone outside. Jax's head snapped up, his movements stilling instantly. Another yelp, closer this time, followed by a coarse laugh and the distinct sound of a kick. His jaw tightened. He knew that sound. It was the sound of casual cruelty, a common enough occurrence in this part of the city, the part he now called home. He rose, discarding his half-eaten meal, his earlier weariness replaced by an alert tension. Slipping on a worn leather jacket, a prop in his Jax persona, he descended the creaking stairs of his building. The sound of muffled curses and another pained whimper led him to the alley behind a rundown liquor store. There, a hulking figure, reeking of cheap booze and aggression, stood over a small, scruffy dog, raising his foot again. The dog, a pathetic tangle of matted fur and protruding ribs, whimpered, trying to cower deeper into the shadows. It was a risk. Blowing his cover for a stray dog was undeniably reckless, a deviation from protocol that could unravel years of painstaking work. But Caelan O'Connell, the man buried deep beneath the hardened exterior of Jax, felt a familiar ache in his chest. He saw the helpless creature, starving and terrified, and something primal stirred. It wasn't just about the dog. It was about the intrinsic injustice, the casual abuse of power that he, as Caelan, had sworn to fight. Without a word, Jax stepped into the alley. His presence, silent and sudden, made the thug pause. "Having trouble there, buddy?" Jax's voice was low, gravelly, perfectly tuned to his persona, calm, but with an underlying threat. The thug scoffed, turning. "Mind your own damn business. Jax, this ain't your dog." "Doesn't have to be," Jax replied, taking another step closer. His eyes, usually veiled and unreadable, held a dangerous glint that the thug, even in his stupor, registered. The air crackled. The thug, bigger but slower, lunged, a clumsy punch aimed at Jax's face. Jax moved with deceptive speed, a blur of practiced precision. He didn't retaliate with brute force. Instead, he caught the thug's wrist, twisted, and leveraged his weight, sending the larger man stumbling forward, tripping over his own feet and landing with an undignified grunt in a pile of garbage. It was swift, effective, and looked more like an accidental fall than a deliberate takedown. Jax offered a feigned shrug. "Clumsy. Aren't you—" The thug, dazed and disoriented, scrambled to his feet, grumbling curses but clearly unwilling to escalate. Jax merely fixed him with a cold stare until the man, sensing the unspoken warning, stumbled out of the alley. Once the thug was gone, Jax knelt beside the cowering dog. Its ribs showed starkly beneath its thin fur, and its eyes were wide with a mix of fear and desperate hope. "Hey there, fella," Jax murmured, his voice softening imperceptibly. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his last protein bar, unwrapping it slowly. The dog's nose twitched, its tail giving a tentative, hopeful wag. Jax broke off a piece and offered it gently. The dog sniffed, then devoured it with a frantic urgency. He spent a few quiet minutes with the dog, stroking its head, feeling the tremors in its small body slowly subside. Then, he led it to a hidden recess beneath a broken dumpster, where it would be safe from the rain that was just beginning to fall, leaving the rest of the protein bar. "Stay here. You hear, I'll be back." This small, selfless act, performed at considerable risk, revealed the inherent goodness beneath the hardened exterior. The compassion that still flickered within Caelan O'Connell. Back in his apartment, the lingering image of the dog, its grateful eyes, softened the edges of his solitude. He moved to a small, worn desk, pulling open a hidden drawer. Inside, tucked beneath a stack of old, fake IDs, was a faded photograph. It was creased and worn at the edges, a testament to how many times it had been held, studied, and put away. The photo showed two boys, no older than 10 or 12, grinning widely at the camera. One was a younger Caelan, his face still round with childhood innocence, his arm thrown around the shoulder of the other boy. Liam, his younger brother, with a mischievous sparkle in his eyes and a gap-toothed smile. They were standing by a rusted swing set in a park that no longer existed, a symbol of a forgotten innocence, a time before shadows and secrets. It was a fragment of a life Caelan had left behind, a past he rarely allowed himself to revisit. This photograph, a small, seemingly insignificant detail, was a constant, nagging reminder of the profound personal connection that defined his mission, the hidden heart of his deep-seated internal conflict. Caelan's commitment to justice was unwavering, an unyielding pillar forged from a past family tragedy, the senseless death of their younger sister in a drive-by shooting, a casualty of the very criminal element he now sought to dismantle. It was a wound that never fully healed, driving his relentless pursuit of those who operated outside the law. He viewed his undercover work not merely as a job, but as a necessary sacrifice, a solitary penance to prevent others from experiencing the same pain. Yet, beneath this iron resolve, a subconscious longing persisted, a phantom ache for the simple, uncomplicated bond he once shared with Liam, for a time when good and evil were clearly defined and the lines hadn't blurred into a terrifying, gray expanse. He had sacrificed everything for his badge, for his oath, but the ghost of his brother, the innocent boy in the photo, haunted the fringes of his consciousness. For years, Caelan had been chipping away at the foundation of the Syndicate, a shadowy, sprawling crime organization that tightened its grip on the city's underbelly like a suffocating shroud. He had heard whispers of its elusive, ruthless leader, known only as the Architect. Fleeting glimpses in his mind, snatches of overheard conversations from low-level thugs, painted a picture of a formidable opponent, cunning, invisible, and utterly without mercy. The Architect was less a person and more a force, a malignant entity pulling strings from the deepest shadows. Jax felt it in his bones he was closer than ever to cracking the inner circle. Sensing a major breakthrough was imminent. The years of isolation, the constant pretense, the gnawing fear of exposure. It was all building to this. He could almost taste the moment when he would finally bring the architect's empire crumbling down. The weight of his oath, the memory of his sister, and the distant hope of a world free from such evil propelled him forward, deeper and deeper into the abyss. The long-awaited call came on a Tuesday, cutting through the stagnant air of Jax's apartment like a sharp blade. It was a distorted voice, a series of static-laced instructions delivered in clipped, anonymous tones, confirming his promotion within the syndicate. He was to attend a meeting tonight, a high-level assembly that promised to open the elusive inner circle, the one he had been chipping away at for years. This was it, the culmination of 7 years of living a lie, of sacrificing his identity, his peace, his very soul. The address led him to a seemingly innocuous location, a dimly lit, nondescript warehouse on the city's waterfront, disguised as a legitimate seafood import business. The smell of brine and old fish hung heavy in the air, masking the metallic tang of something far more sinister. Inside, behind a sliding metal door disguised as a freezer unit, was a hidden back room. It was sparse, almost clinical, with a long, polished table at its center and a single bare bulb illuminating the faces of the half-dozen men already seated. The contrast between the mundane exterior and the sinister interior was jarring, a chilling symbol of the organization itself. Jax took his assigned seat, his senses immediately scanning the room. He registered the faces, the postures, the subtle shifts in power dynamics among the mid-level lieutenants. He was a sponge, absorbing every detail, ready to feed it back to his handlers, to finally bring the architect down. The air in the room was thick with unspoken tension, a silent understanding of the ruthless hierarchy they served. Then he saw it. One of the lieutenants, a burly man with his back mostly turned, gestured emphatically as he spoke, his sleeve riding up just enough to reveal a flash of skin. On his inner wrist, a tattoo. It was small, a stylized, interlocking design of 2 jagged mountains beneath a crescent moon. Kalen's breath hitched, a silent internal gasp that threatened to betray his carefully constructed composure. He knew that tattoo. He knew it with a sickening certainty that froze his blood. It was identical to the one he and his brother, Liam, had designed together in their youth, a secret pact, a symbol of their unbreakable bond, inked clumsily by a rookie tattoo artist in a dingy parlor the summer they turned 18. His mind reeled, a maelstrom of denial and terror. No, it couldn't be. Liam, his little brother, the gap-toothed kid who used to fall asleep on his shoulder during late-night video game sessions, the aspiring mechanic who dreamed of opening his own garage. This man, this syndicate lieutenant, couldn't be Liam. But the tattoo, the distinctness of the design, the slight blur of the lines where the ink had bled, the tiny scar just above it from a long-forgotten bike accident. It was undeniable. Kalen's police training kicked in, a brutal, automatic response that forced him to maintain his cover. His face remained impassive, his eyes steady, but beneath the surface, his world was shattering into a million jagged pieces. He felt a wave of nausea, fear, and a desperate, agonizing hope that it was all a terrible mistake, a cruel trick of the light. Yet, the distinctness of the tattoo, a secret family symbol, ignited a buried instinct, a desperate animal need to know the truth, no matter the cost, no matter the horror. Fragmented memories of his childhood with Liam, their shared dreams of escaping their troubled neighborhood, their whispered promises of always looking out for each other, flashed before his eyes. The easy laughter, the innocent mischief, the unwavering trust they had shared. It all collided with the grim reality of the man sitting across from him. This personal shock forced him to reevaluate his entire mission, his entire life's purpose. The meeting continued, but Kalen heard nothing. His gaze was fixed, surreptitiously, on Liam's wrist, then flickered to the back of his head, the set of his shoulders. There was a familiar slump, a curve to the spine that he knew, a scar just above the left ear, from a youthful skirmish. It was Liam. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. His little brother, on the wrong side of the law, deeply entrenched in the very criminal underworld Kalen had sworn to dismantle. The architect's voice, a low, modulated growl from the head of the table, cut through Kalen's internal torment. "Liam," the voice commanded, "its authority absolute. You will oversee the new shipments from the docks, ensure the new distribution network is secure, and handle any loose ends." The words were chillingly clear. New shipments meant drugs, weapons, or worse. New distribution network meant expanding their reach, poisoning more corners of the city, and loose ends. That was syndicate speak for violence, for murder, for silencing anyone who stood in their way. Liam, his brother, was not just a low-level thug. He was a lieutenant, given a critical task, a task that was clearly illegal and dangerous. The architect's voice, devoid of emotion, laid bare the cold, calculating nature of their operation. Kalen felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He was no longer simply observing. He was now face to face with the devastating possibility of his own brother's criminality, his direct involvement in serious felonies. This was no longer just a case, a mission to uphold justice. This was family. This was personal. He could not walk away. His duty as a detective, his oath to protect the innocent, and now, his desperate personal need for the truth about Liam, demanded that he see this through to its agonizing conclusion. The point of no return had been crossed, irrevocably. The line between his professional life and his deeply personal one had blurred into a terrifying, indistinguishable mess. The revelation of Liam's presence within the syndicate had fractured Kalen's carefully constructed world, turning his mission into a crucible of personal torment. Yet, he was a detective, honed by years of discipline and an unyielding commitment to justice. He had to maintain his cover, had to continue his infiltration, even as every fiber of his being screamed to rip off his disguise and confront his brother. The architect, cunning and invisible, had unknowingly thrown Kalen into the ultimate personal gauntlet. The architect's new assignment, given to Jax just days after the shocking meeting, was both a test and an opportunity. "Liam will be your direct contact," the distorted voice had instructed through a burner phone. "He'll brief you on the new delivery system. Show him you're worth your salt. Jax, we need loyalty, and we need competence." The first direct encounter with Liam, face to face, under the guise of Jax, was agonizing. They met in a dimly lit, anonymous diner on the outskirts of the city, a place where no one would look twice at two rough-looking men sharing a booth. Liam, leaner than Kalen remembered, with a haunted look in his eyes that belied his tough exterior, slid into the seat opposite him. His left wrist, with the familiar mountain tattoo, rested on the table as he spread out a crudely drawn map. "All right, Jax," Liam began, his voice deeper, rougher than Kalen remembered, yet with a faint echo of the boy he once knew. "The architect wants this new delivery system to be airtight. We're moving the product through the old abandoned subway tunnels. Fewer eyes, fewer ears. But it's tricky. Collapsed sections, old water mains. We need someone who can navigate it blind." Liam's eyes, once bright with youthful dreams, were now hard, wary. But Kalen could still glimpse the familiar shape, the faint flicker of the brother he'd lost. Kalen studied the map, his mind racing. This wasn't just about drugs. It was about the very infrastructure of the syndicate's illicit operations. This was his chance to get deeper, to map their arteries, to find their heart. But it meant working side by side with Liam, becoming complicit in his brother's crimes. The internal conflict was a raw wound, festering with every shared breath. Their first real job together came a week later. It was a transfer of a large shipment of synthetic opioids, hidden within reinforced crates, through a particularly treacherous section of the old subway tunnels. The air was thick with the stench of mildew and decay, the only light from their headlamps cutting through the oppressive darkness. Jax and Liam, along with two other syndicate enforcers, were moving the crates on a makeshift trolley. Suddenly, the ground vibrated. A low rumble echoed through the tunnel, growing louder. "Rival gang," one of the enforcers yelled, his voice laced with panic. They must have tipped off about the route. Gunfire erupted from the darkness ahead, sporadic at first, then a sustained volley. The two other enforcers immediately scattered, diving for cover, leaving Jax and Liam exposed, caught between the approaching gunfire and the heavy, immovable crates. Liam cursed, drawing a pistol. He returned fire blindly, but they were pinned. "Damn it. We're sitting ducks," he growled, desperation creeping into his voice. He glanced at Jax, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and grim determination. Kalen's police training, usually suppressed beneath layers of crude Jax mannerisms, surged to the forefront. This was the moment. He had to act. He couldn't let Liam die, but he couldn't blow his cover. His talent, his true skills, had to be revealed, but under duress, appearing as instinct or brute luck. Down Jax roared, his voice cutting through the gunfire. He shoved Liam behind a stack of rusted pipes. Then, with a lightning-fast movement, he took a loose rebar from the ground. Instead of engaging directly in a chaotic shootout, he assessed the tunnel's structure. He knew about the unstable sections, the weakened supports. He didn't just fire back, he aimed for the weakest point in the tunnel's ceiling, a section he had noted during their initial reconnaissance. With a precise, powerful throw, he launched the rebar. It spun through the air, striking a fragile support beam with a sickening thud. The impact, combined with the vibrations from the ongoing shootout, caused a controlled, localized collapse. Dust and debris rained down, creating a temporary, deafening barrier between them and the rival gang. The gunfire ceased, replaced by shouts of confusion and the scrape of falling rock. Liam, shielded by the pipes, stared at Jax. His eyes narrowed. He'd seen the casual precision of the throw, the immediate understanding of the tunnel's weakness. It was far beyond what a typical street thug could have managed. "What the hell, Jax? You just collapsed the damn tunnel," he yelled, a mix of awe and suspicion in his voice. "Diversion," Jax grunted, his voice still rough, but his eyes held a steely glint as he pulled Liam away from the falling debris. "They won't follow us through that. Let's move the product. Now." Liam, seeing the sense in the move and realizing it had saved their lives, nodded, still processing what he had just witnessed. He looked at Jax with a flicker of suspicion, recognition, and a strange sense of familiarity that he couldn't quite place. Jax's ability to instinctively understand the structural weakness of the tunnel, to use it as a weapon, impressed Liam. It was a level of strategic thinking he hadn't expected from a brute. Liam, antagonist type B, misunderstood, was impressed but also wary. His criminal instincts aroused. He'd seen competence before, but this was different. This was calculated. Unbeknownst to them, the whispers of Jax's unexpected prowess reached the architect. Their network of informants was vast, their ears everywhere. A report landed on the architect's polished desk. Jax, impressive, resourceful, handled the tunnel skirmish with unusual tactical insight, protected the product. No casualties on our side. Rivals scattered, potentially valuable, but unreadable. The architect, cloaked in shadow in a penthouse office overlooking the city, steepled their fingers. Their mind, a labyrinth of cunning and manipulation, processed the information. They saw Jax not as a simple pawn, but as a potential threat or an unexpected asset. Such raw, disguised talent was dangerous if not controlled. The architect's thoughts revealed their meticulous, almost artistic approach to crime. They viewed their organization as a grand, intricate design, and every piece, every pawn, had to be precisely placed or eliminated. A new, highly dangerous assignment was issued to Jax, specifically designed to test his loyalty and probe the extent of his abilities, perhaps even setting a trap. This assignment also placed Jax in direct, prolonged contact with Liam, forcing a closer, more intense interaction. The architect wanted to see how Jax would perform under extreme pressure, how deep his loyalties ran. Liam, meanwhile, began to subtly probe Jax. During their long hours in the tunnels, during clandestine meetings in smoky bars, he would ask seemingly innocuous questions about Jax's past, his family, his motivations. "Where'd you learn to pull a stunt like that? Jax, you ain't just some street grunt, are you?" His eyes would linger, trying to place the nagging familiarity, a shadow of recognition that danced just beyond his grasp. He felt an inexplicable pull towards Jax, a ghost of a connection that both intrigued and disturbed him. The omniscient narrator revealed Liam's internal conflict he respected, Jax's street smarts and survival instincts. But he sensed something deeply unsettling about him, a competence that didn't quite fit the typical criminal profile he was used to. It was as if Jax was playing a role, but Liam couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. The stage was set for the ultimate test, not just of Kalen's cover, but of his soul. The new assignment from the architect plunged Kalen deeper into the heart of the Syndicate's operations, a journey into the abyss that now, agonizingly, included his own brother. This was the ultimate gauntlet, a relentless psychological and emotional torment that pushed Kalen to the very brink. Every interaction with Liam, every shared glance, every grunt of shared effort, forced Kalen to confront the devastating reality his brother, the innocent boy from his cherished memories, was now a hardened criminal, entangled in acts that sickened Kalen to his core. The assignment was deceptively simple on the surface: transport a highly volatile chemical compound, used in the manufacture of a new, potent synthetic drug, from a clandestine lab in the industrial district to a processing facility hidden beneath an old, abandoned textile mill. The inherent danger of the substance itself was compounded by the route directly through the winding, dilapidated streets of their childhood neighborhood. This symbolic arena intensified Kalen's emotional turmoil. Every peeling paint facade, every cracked sidewalk, every rusted swing set in a forgotten park echoed with ghosts. He saw the faded murals on the brick walls, remnants of community projects from their youth, now defaced by gang tags. The corner store where they used to buy penny candy was now a boarded-up husk. The community center, where their mother had volunteered and Liam had spent countless hours tinkering with old car engines, was now a known syndicate drop-off point. It was a place where their childhood dreams once flourished, now irrevocably tainted by criminality. A living monument to the path Liam had chosen. Kalen drove the beat-up van, the heavy crates clanking ominously in the back. Liam sat beside him, navigating, his eyes scanning the streets with a predatory awareness that sent shivers down Kalen's spine. Liam would point out landmarks, seemingly innocent at first, but with a subtext of their current reality. "Remember old Manelli's bakery? Jax. We used to sneak cannolis from there." Then, a beat later, "Now, it's just another front for the East Siders. Too bad. Their cannolis were legendary." The casual transition from nostalgic innocence to cynical criminality was a constant, brutal reminder for Kalen of the chasm that had opened between them. Kalen's internal conflict was a raw, festering wound. Duty screamed at him to expose Liam, to bring him to justice, to cut out the cancer that had infected his own family. But brotherly love, a deep, primal bond, fought back, pleading for understanding, for a second chance, for the innocent boy who still flickered in Liam's hardened eyes. He saw flickers of the old Liam in small gestures, a quick, protective hand on Kalen's arm when a rival car passed too close, a flash of genuine amusement when Kalen, as Jax, cracked a dark joke. Even the way Liam would instinctively shield a stray cat that darted across the street. These fleeting moments of humanity only made the betrayal more agonizing, forcing Kalen to wonder how far Liam had truly fallen, or if there was still a part of him worth saving. He struggled with the urge to reveal himself, to grab Liam, to shake him, to yell, "It's me. Liam, your brother. What are you doing?" But he knew it would jeopardize the entire operation. Years of sacrifice, countless lives that could be saved by bringing the architect down. And worse, it could endanger Liam even further. The syndicate had no mercy for traitors, especially those who brought law enforcement into their ranks. Kalen carried the burden of this secret knowledge by himself, isolated by his duty and his agonizing personal dilemma. There was no one he could confide in, no one who could understand the torment of watching his own flesh and blood become the very enemy he was sworn to destroy. Even his memories of Liam, once a source of comfort, now became a form of torment, a constant comparison between what was and what had become. The pressure intensified exponentially with the ticking clock. The architect had given them a strict deadline: the chemicals had to be delivered to the textile mill by midnight. A rival gang, the Cobras, was rumored to be planning a raid on the syndicate's supply lines. And if the chemicals weren't moved, they would be lost. A severe financial blow to the architect, and a potential death sentence for those who failed. As they navigated the labyrinthine backstreets, a red light blinked rapidly on the dashboard, a warning light for a rapidly depleting fuel tank. Kalen cursed inwardly. He had specifically not topped off the tank, a deliberate, subtle sabotage to slow them down, to create a controlled crisis. He needed to buy time, to engineer a situation where he could gain more information, perhaps even find a way to extract Liam without blowing his cover entirely. But the risk was immense. "Damn it! Jax! You should have checked the fuel," Liam snapped, his eyes darting to the gauge. "We're almost on E. The architect's gonna have our heads if we're late." His voice was laced with genuine fear, a chilling reminder of the consequences of failure in this brutal world. Kalen grunted, feigning frustration. "Thought I had enough. Must have been faulty gauge. We gotta find a gas station. Fast." The only gas station on their route was several blocks away, in a particularly hostile territory, known to be frequented by Cobra gang members. This was Kalen's calculated risk. He pulled the van into the dimly lit station, the sputtering engine protesting. As Liam got out to fill the tank, Kalen's eyes scanned their surroundings, his senses on high alert. The omnipresent danger of the syndicate's ruthless efficiency, combined with the hostile environment, created an unbearable pressure. He knew every move had to be perfect. Liam, oblivious to Kalen's true identity, was increasingly suspicious of Jax's unusual competence. The subtle ways Jax seemed to anticipate trouble, to know things he shouldn't. "This feels off," Liam muttered, his hand resting on the pistol tucked into his waistband, his eyes darting nervously. Too quiet. Suddenly, the screech of tires echoed from a nearby alley. 3 cars, dark and menacing, swerved into the gas station, headlights blazing. Cobra. At least a dozen armed men spilled out, their faces obscured by bandanas. "Syndicate trash," one of them yelled, brandishing a shotgun. "This territory's ours." Liam reacted instantly, drawing his pistol and returning fire, shouting for Kalen to get back in the van. Kalen, however, knew a direct shootout was a death sentence. He had to perform his undercover role flawlessly, while simultaneously trying to protect Liam without blowing his cover or compromising the mission. He was caught between a rock and a hard place, his duty and his bloodline colliding in a hail of gunfire. "Distraction!" Kalen yelled, his voice raw. He kicked open the driver's side door, not to escape, but to create a diversion. He grabbed a forgotten gas can from the back of the van, feigned a stumble, and accidentally knocked over a stack of oil drums near the station's convenience store. The drums clattered, echoing loudly, drawing the attention of some of the Cobras. In that brief moment of chaos, Kalen knew he had to act. He didn't just want to escape. He needed to gather intel, to find a weakness in the Cobra's formation, to give his own team, monitoring from a distance, a clear shot at the architect's men. This was the ultimate test. Kalen O'Connell, the detective, pitted against Jax, the criminal, with Liam, his brother, caught in the terrifying crossfire. The ticking clock of midnight pressed down on them, each second a hammer blow against Kalen's fracturing resolve. He had to survive. He had to complete the mission, and somehow, impossibly, he had to save his brother from himself. The gas station exploded into a tableau of chaotic violence. Gunfire ripped through the air, shattering the night's false quiet. Liam, caught in the open, emptied his clip at the approaching cobras, his face a grim mask of desperation. Kalen, having created the diversion with the oil drums, lunged back towards the van, his mind a blur of tactical calculations and raw, brotherly fear. He had to save Liam. He had to complete the mission. And somehow, both had to happen simultaneously without exposing his true identity. A bullet whizzed past his ear, embedding itself with a sharp thwack in the van's side. Kalen ducked, pulling a loose wrench from his jacket, a tool of Jax, the street mechanic. He didn't fire back with a gun. Instead, he used the wrench, not as a blunt weapon, but as a precise projectile. With a snap of his wrist, he flung it, aiming not at a cobra, but at the light fixture above the gas pump. The glass shattered, plunging that section of the station into deeper darkness, momentarily disorienting the attackers. Fall back. Liam. Get in the van. Kalen roared, his voice low but urgent, laced with an authority that Liam instinctively obeyed. Liam scrambled into the passenger seat, reloading his pistol, his eyes darting frantically. Just as Kalen slammed the driver's door shut, a sleek, black sedan peeled around the corner of the station, headlights blinding. It wasn't a Cobra car. It was the architect's personal escort, led by the architect themselves, stepping out from the back seat, a chillingly calm figure amidst the chaos. Jax Liam. What is this mess? The architect's voice, usually modulated and distant, was now a low, furious snarl. They had arrived, drawn by the unexpected firefight, just as Kalen had gambled they would. This was the trap Kalen had unwittingly sprung on himself. The breath-holding moment. The architect, seeing the Cobras gaining ground, drew a silenced pistol, but their aim wasn't at the rival gang. It was at Liam. Loose ends, Lieutenant. The architect growled, their face illuminated by the flickering convenience store sign. A chilling mask of cold fury. Liam, turning to face his boss, saw the weapon. His eyes widened in terror. He knew. The architect didn't tolerate failure or complications. He was about to be eliminated. Kalen saw the deadly intent, felt the slow-motion dread. Liam, his brother, was a dead man. Kalen, the detective, had his target. Kalen, the brother, was about to lose everything. For a critical, agonizing moment, Kalen hesitated, his hand frozen on the ignition, caught between his oath and his blood. His face, usually a mask of indifference, flickered with raw anguish. He appeared to falter, paralyzed by the impossible choice. The architect observed, a smug, satisfied smile spreading across their lips, believing they had Kalen trapped, seeing his fleeting indecision. Detailed description of each action time seemed to warp. In that suspended second, Kalen made his split-second decision. Duty, brotherly love. They converged. He slammed his foot on the accelerator, sending the van lurching forward, not away from the architect, but towards them. A reckless, suicidal maneuver that shocked everyone. The architect, momentarily startled, diverted their aim. As the van sped past, Kalen executed a maneuver that only years of advanced police driving had perfected. He swerved sharply, almost scraping the architect's car, then slammed the brakes, sending the van into a controlled, screaming slide that spun it 180 degrees. The heavy crates in the back shifted with a deafening groan. In that precise moment, As the van spun, Kalen, with a blur of motion, unlatched the back doors. The centrifugal force, combined with the sudden braking, sent two of the heavy chemical crates sliding out of the van, directly into the path of the architect's approaching men. They scattered, yelling in alarm, narrowly avoiding the tumbling crates. This created a brief, crucial gap. Kalen didn't stop there. As the van completed its spin, facing the Cobras who were now confused by the sudden, bizarre maneuver, Kalen aimed a precise, controlled burst from the van's emergency fire extinguisher at the Cobra's lead car's windshield, blinding them with a cloud of white foam. "Now! Liam!" Kalen yelled, his voice raw, looking directly at his brother. His eyes met Liam's, and in that fleeting, chaotic second, a flicker of recognition, a familiar intensity, passed between them. It was a whisper of a warning only Liam could understand. "Out the back, now." Kalen pointed with his chin towards the newly opened back of the van, indicating the path through the now scattered chemical crates, away from the direct line of fire. Liam, stunned by the sudden, audacious tactics, hesitated for a second. Then, seeing the opportunity, scrambled out the back of the van, diving into the confusion where the chemical crates had tumbled. He was out of sight, lost in the immediate chaos, not explicitly saved, but given a lifeline. Kalen, satisfied, then floored the accelerator, sending the van screeching away from the gas station, leaving the architect's men caught between the still struggling Cobras and the scattered chemical compounds. Reaction of witnesses. From a discreet distance, a black, unmarked police SUV had been monitoring the entire operation. Detective Miller, Kalen's longtime handler, and Captain Ramirez, their unit head, watched the unfolding events on a grainy surveillance feed. They saw Jax's inexplicable, almost suicidal maneuver, the impossible spin, the calculated release of the crates, the blinding foam. What the hell was that? Miller. Captain Ramirez breathed, his eyes wide with disbelief. He just outmaneuvered both gangs and the architect. They didn't understand the personal stakes, only that Jax was an extraordinary operative, far beyond anything they had seen, a tactical genius who had turned a desperate situation into a strategic advantage. "He's a goddamn phantom," Miller murmured, a grudging admiration in his voice. Always a step ahead. Liam, watching Kalen's Jax's actions from his temporary cover behind the fallen crates, was initially confused. The sheer audacity of the moves, the precise timing, the almost supernatural understanding of the unfolding chaos. It didn't make sense for a common thug. Then, Kalen's eyes had met his, and in that split second, a chilling realization dawned on him. The intensity, the familiar shape of the eyes, the way Kalen had known exactly where to put him, how to create the escape route. That was not Jax. That was Kalen, his brother, the detective. A wave of bitter betrayal washed over him, quickly followed by a dawning, horrifying understanding of the magnitude of Kalen's sacrifice, his years-long infiltration, his agonizing choice. The architect, their face contorted with utter disbelief, watched their meticulously planned operation crumble. Their men were scattered, the chemicals compromised, and Jax, their newly acquired asset, had vanished into the night, leaving them outmaneuvered, exposed, and furious. Their smugness was replaced by a primal rage. They had underestimated their opponent, a ghost who had walked among them, dismantling their empire from within. The aftermath was swift. The police, led by Ramirez and Miller, moved in, coordinating with Kalen via a secure line. The Cobras, disorganized and caught between the architect's enraged men and the sudden arrival of law enforcement, were swiftly apprehended. The architect, abandoned by their rattled security detail, was cornered, their reign of terror finally at an end. Kalen drove the van directly to the rendezvous point, pulling up silently. He stepped out, shed his Jax persona like a discarded skin, and stood tall. the detective once more. Captain Ramirez approached, his face grim but admiring. Jax, Kalen, you did it. The architect is in custody. The syndicate's network is crippled. Then, the moment Kalen had dreaded more than any bullet, Liam, cuffed and flanked by 2 officers, was brought forward. His eyes, still reeling from the shock of the shootout, locked onto Kalen's. The initial shock turned to cold, bitter betrayal. Kalen, Liam whispered, his voice hoarse, disbelieving. It was you. All this time. You were a cop. Kalen nodded, his heart a leaden weight in his chest. I'm sorry, Liam, he said, his voice raw, stripped bare of all pretense. I had to. The raw, gut-wrenching confrontation between the 2 brothers took place amidst the flashing lights of police cruisers and the distant wail of sirens, a moment of profound personal tragedy amidst professional triumph. Liam's initial shock hardened into anger, then a flicker of understanding of the true depths of Kalen's sacrifice. He saw the haunted look in Kalen's eyes, the pain that mirrored his own. Kalen's vindication was indeed bittersweet. He had served justice, but at an immense personal cost, irrevocably severing the last thread to his brother's innocence and their shared past. The flashing red and blue lights of the cruisers painted the gas station with an eerie, pulsating glow as the aftermath unfolded. The screams of the arrested Cobras and the disoriented architect's men mingled with the urgent commands of police officers. Kalen, now fully Kalen O'Connell, the detective, stood tall, his Jax persona shed like a heavy, suffocating skin. The cold air of the night seemed to clear his head, but it couldn't touch the leaden weight in his chest. Captain Ramirez, his face grim but alight with a fierce pride, approached Kalen. You did it. O'Connell, he said, his voice low, filled with a grudging admiration. The architect is in custody. We've recovered the chemicals, dismantled their network. It's over. Detective Miller, Kalen's longtime handler, clapped him on the shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the years of sacrifice that had led to this moment. The downfall of the architect was swift and devastating. Their capture at the gas station, exposed and abandoned, was only the beginning. Kalen's meticulous undercover work, the years of painstakingly gathered intelligence, the countless recordings, financial ledgers, and coded messages he had transmitted, it all converged into an insurmountable mountain of evidence. The architect, once an invisible force, a whisper in the shadows, was publicly unmasked. Their true identity, a prominent businessman with deep political ties, sent shockwaves through the city's elite. The details of their ruthless crimes, drug trafficking, extortion, murder, the calculated destruction of lives and communities, were laid bare in the headlines, sparking outrage and a collective sigh of relief. Their empire crumbled within days, their lieutenants rounded up, their assets seized. The architect, the cold, calculating villain type A, faced a lifetime in maximum security prison, their grand design reduced to rubble, their reign of terror definitively at an end. Justice, hard-won and costly, had finally been served. Then came the moment Kalen had been dreading more than any bullet, any fistfight, any confrontation with a ruthless gangster. Liam was brought forward, handcuffed and flanked by 2 stern-faced officers, his eyes, still wide with the shock of the shootout and the sudden revelation of Kalen's true identity, locked onto his brothers. Kalen Liam whispered again, his voice raw, disbelieving, a desperate plea for this nightmare to be just that, a nightmare. It was you all this time, you were a cop. His face contorted, a complex mixture of betrayal, confusion, and a burgeoning rage. You lied to me. You pretended to be one of them. You betrayed me. Kalen nodded, his own eyes mirroring Liam's pain, but tempered with a resolve that transcended the immediate moment. I'm sorry, Liam, he said, his voice hoarse, stripped bare of all pretense, revealing the exhaustion and the deep sorrow he had carried for so long. I had to. This life you fell into. It was killing you. It was destroying everything we ever stood for. Liam scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Destroying everything you think this is saving me? You just put me in a cage. The raw, gut-wrenching confrontation between the two brothers took place amidst the flashing lights of police cruisers and the distant wail of sirens, a public spectacle of private tragedy. Liam's initial shock hardened into anger, then a slow, agonizing dawning of understanding. In the coming weeks, in the cold confines of his cell, as the full extent of the syndicate's brutality was laid out, the casual violence, the broken promises, the way they had used and discarded men like him, Liam, antagonist type B, misunderstood, was forced to confront the dark path he had chosen. He remembered Kalen's warnings, the subtle ways Jax had protected him during the operation, the precise maneuvers that had inadvertently saved his life multiple times. He began to see Kalen's agony, the impossible choice his brother had faced. It didn't excuse his own actions, but it cast them in a different light. During the subsequent trials, Kalen testified. He spoke of Liam's initial reluctance, the desperation that had driven him into the syndicate's clutches, the pressures he had faced. He highlighted moments where Liam had shown a glimmer of his old self, a hesitation to commit certain acts, subtle signs of a conscience not entirely extinguished. This testimony, meticulously delivered, combined with Kalen's detailed intelligence on the architect's coercive tactics, allowed the court to see Liam not just as a hardened criminal, but as a misguided victim of circumstance. Liam received a lesser sentence than he might have, along with a path to rehabilitation that included mandatory counseling and vocational training. From prison, weeks later, Kalen received a short, almost illegible note. It simply read, "I get it now. Thanks. L." It was a quiet acknowledgement, a glimmer of forgiveness, a fragile first step towards a long, arduous path to reconciliation. Kalen, the detective, was hailed as a hero within the police department. His years of dedication, his courage, and his strategic brilliance had brought down one of the city's most formidable criminal enterprises. He was offered a promotion, a coveted leadership role in an elite undercover unit, or a position as a chief investigator, where his unique skills in infiltration and psychological insights into criminal minds would be invaluable. This opportunity was not just a career advancement, it was a chance to shape the next generation of law enforcement, to prevent others from falling into similar traps. Both as victims and perpetrators, it offered him a new purpose, a way to channel his experience beyond the isolated, shadow-filled world of deep cover. Days after the arrests, Kalen sat in Captain Ramirez's office, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and victory. Ramirez, a gruff but deeply empathetic man who had recognized Kalen's potential early on and understood the immense toll of deep cover, offered him a rare, unvarnished look of understanding. "You paid a heavy price for this, O'Connell," Ramirez said, leaning back in his creaking chair. "More than most. I saw the look on your face when Liam was brought in." Kalen ran a hand over his tired eyes. "He's my brother. Captain. Always will be." "I know," Ramirez said softly. "That's what makes you so damn good at this job, and what makes it so damn hard. You carry the weight of humanity, even when you're fighting the worst of it." He gestured to the promotion papers on his desk. "This isn't just a medal, Kalen. It's a chance to heal, to use what you've learned, what you've suffered, to prevent other families from being torn apart like yours." Kalen looked at the papers, then out the window at the city skyline, a complex tapestry of steel and glass, of light and shadow. He reflected on the choices he had made, the agonizing burden of duty that had forced him to betray his own blood. The pain was still raw, a constant throb, but it was no longer all-consuming. He acknowledged the immense cost, the irreparable damage to his personal life, to his relationship with Liam, but he also recognized the necessity of his actions. He had upheld his oath. He had brought a monstrous criminal to justice. And in doing so, he had, perhaps, given Liam a chance at redemption. He slowly began to process the trauma, finding a fragile, hard-won peace in the knowledge that he had done what was right, even at such a devastating personal cost. The path to healing would be long, but for the first time in years, Caelan O'Connell saw a faint light at the end of the tunnel. 2 years later, the city skyline, once a complex tapestry of steel and glass, of light and shadow, now held a different meaning for Caelan O'Connell. He still saw the stark contrasts, the inherent battles between order and chaos, but his gaze was less burdened, more accepting. The raw ache in his chest had receded, replaced by a deep-seated quiet strength, a resilience forged in the crucible of his past. Caelan was no longer the isolated phantom of his undercover years. He had taken the promotion, accepting the leadership role of a newly formed elite unit specializing in dismantling high-level criminal organizations through long-term infiltration. His unique blend of tactical brilliance and profound psychological insight made him indispensable. He balanced the demanding nature of his work with a new sense of personal connection. He had reconnected with old friends from before his deep cover, tentative at first, but now, rebuilding genuine bonds, he had even, surprisingly, found love with a social worker named Dr. Elena Rodriguez, whose unwavering compassion for the city's most vulnerable resonated deeply with Caelan's own quiet idealism. Their relationship was built on honesty and mutual respect, a stark contrast to the deceptive world he had inhabited for so long. She saw Caelan, not Jax, and she understood the complex scars he carried, offering him a solace he hadn't dared to dream of. He still visited Liam. Their conversations, held in the sterile visiting room of the correctional facility, were difficult, often punctuated by long silences and unspoken regrets. But they were happening. Liam, through mandatory counseling and the harsh reality of his sentence, had begun a slow, arduous path towards reconciliation with himself and with Caelan. The bitterness in his eyes had softened, replaced by a weary understanding. He spoke of his vocational training in carpentry, of his plans for life after release, tentative steps towards redemption. The last note Caelan had received. "I get it now. Thanks. L." Had indeed been the fragile first step. During their visits, Caelan would leave him books, mostly on philosophy and self-improvement, hoping they would continue to spark the introspection Liam needed. And then there was Buddy. The scruffy stray dog Caelan had saved years ago was no longer scruffy. He was a sleek, loyal companion, a constant presence in Caelan's apartment, a furry anchor to the reality of his new life. Buddy would greet him at the door with excited yips and a wagging tail, a simple, unconditional affection that often melted the last vestiges of Caelan's guarded exterior. Buddy was a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could lead to profound connection and unexpected joy. Caelan, profoundly aware of the path Liam had almost irreversibly taken, dedicated himself to paying it forward. He spearheaded a new police initiative, a mentorship program specifically designed for at-risk youth in the very neighborhoods where he and Liam had grown up. He wasn't just a detective, he was a beacon. He regularly visited community centers, no longer in disguise, but in plain clothes, talking to teenagers on the cusp of making life-altering choices. He shared stories generalized, of course, without revealing the specifics of his undercover life or Liam's situation about the allure of the streets, the false promises of power, and the devastating consequences that followed. He taught them about resilience, about making hard choices, about finding their own path. He showed them alternatives, connecting them with vocational programs, sports leagues, and artistic outlets, echoing his own sister's tragic fate and Liam's lost potential. He found a deep sense of healing in helping others navigate the treacherous currents he knew all too well, pouring his pain into purpose. The story ends on a quiet, sun-drenched afternoon. Caelan stands on the newly renovated basketball court of the old community center. a place once shadowed by the syndicate's influence. The faded murals from his childhood had been repainted, vibrant and hopeful. Young kids, some of whom were part of his mentorship program, laughed and played, their energy a stark contrast to the silence that once permeated this place. Buddy sat patiently at Kalen's feet, occasionally nudging his hand for a scratch behind the ears. Kalen looked towards the horizon, where the city lights would soon begin to twinkle, a complex tapestry of dark and light, crime and justice. He carried his scars, both visible and invisible, but they no longer defined him. They were part of his story, a testament to his survival and his capacity for compassion. A faint melody, an old shared childhood song that he and Liam used to hum, drifted into his mind, not with the sharp sting of pain, but with a quiet acceptance and a glimmer of hope for redemption. Liam was in a cage, but he was alive, and he was working towards a future. Kalen had done his duty. He had chosen justice, and in doing so, he had, perhaps, saved not just his brother's life, but his soul. He looked out at the bright faces of the children, playing freely, dreaming of futures untainted by the shadows. The future, he realized, was not a lonely path, but a journey of continued purpose, of slow, hard-won healing, and the quiet, enduring power of light against darkness. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.